more with the Hero System games, RPG game system. I'm also using again the Hero System, Hero Designer 6 software to make characters and items and so forth for use in a fantasy hero game, fantasy setting that I will be running for my players in the next, starting in the next month or so. Well, probably soon after the new year. Anyway, um, today I thought I'd go over how to do some racial packages. In other words, to set the requirements, the required or forward front things to do for various races, and that PCs are allowed to uh, to be and develop as their characters. The ones I'm interested in trying to get through today to show you some of the capabilities of the system are for an elf, what I term as a Flind, kind of a halfling or hobbit, if you will, race, but with my own take and twist on it. And I have two types of dwarves in my world, so there today will be the mountain dwarf instead of the hill dwarf, and then maybe try to show how you use one of these packages to create a character, although probably won't go through full character creation with it. So, with that said, the first thing you have to do is the thing you start off every time with a new character. And so we get our basic information, such as our base points, the maximum points from disadvantages, and any experience points earned on the character, character's name, campaign name, genre, player, GM, so forth. Since this isn't going to be a full character yet, I'm going to leave all that blank and move straight on to creating an elf package. So with that, I start with the characteristics because, of course, each race, not human, probably is going to have or should have some changes in where they start with their characteristics, their stats. I also use alternate rules where it changes. If you look down here, you've got normal characteristic maxima. Usually, for all of these base stats, from comeliness on up to strength or strength down to comeliness, the characteristic maxima is 20. If you want to go beyond that, you have to pay double the cost for your points. So I also change for the various races that stat maxima. And with this software, I got to admit, it wasn't designed for that, so that takes some finessing. But I'm not going to go into that just now because, in general, a campaign will have to go on for a very, very long time for there to be enough character points given to the characters, to the players, to boost their stats up to the stat maximum, much less over it. That said, working on elves. In my world, elves are generally not as strong as humans, so I start out with their maximum and that's their starting value for strength to be low, as well as their their constitution. But they're a little more nimble and dexterous, so that's elevated. Now, where am I getting these from? These are from my own mind. This is my take on what an elf should be. They're tall, they're thin. Think more along the lines of Teutonic or Old Norse elves as opposed to um, um, Keebler elves or something like that, or even D&D elves, which are usually shorter. So that said, continuing on with these, those are the major changes. Elves also are a little prettier, a little more attractive than humans are. Something about having, nice gold and blonde and red hair and amber eyes and things like that, as well as being thin and generally attractive. So there's the extent of their changes on their characteristics. So we can move on from there. Now, the next tab over skills, this is racial abilities. So this is things inherent to being an elf. So there really shouldn't be any skills involved in that because that's more of a cultural issue. And, you could conceivably have an elf that was not raised by elves, and this therefore would not know how to handle a bow better or anything like that. Now, you can make up a cultural package using this same style system, this same methodology, but we won't be including any skills in the racial package. So moving along, perks, the same thing applies there. Now talents, we're not going to put any on the elf here, but there are potential cases where you would have a racial package that could include a talent. For instance, my hobgoblins that I do as a monstrous race have the talent of rapid healing as an inherent ability. What rapid healing is essentially regeneration. Seriously? uh, Wonder Goon asked me to start over, and he was joking. But the rapid healing is basically if you rest for an hour, you regain one of your body. In the hero system, you have two types of hit points: body and stun. You run out of body, you're dead. You run out of stun, you're just unconscious. So, with that in mind, rapid healing is essentially regeneration that acts on an hourly basis if you are sitting still and resting. And so my hobgoblin race that I've created has that as a base ability. They are simply hardy and able to regenerate health at a faster than normal humans possible. Our elves, though, they're not going to have any of these. They do have some powers, though. Namely, let's see, looking at my notes here, because like I said, I came up with this on my own. Namely, they have a life support. Where is it? There it is. Life support. And it didn't open up for me because I'm having trouble double clicking today for some reason. And life support covers a lot of things. Extended breathing, expanded breathing. Extended breathing means you can hold your breath for longer than normal. Expanded means you can breathe in an unusual environment, such as underwater or in methane gas or something like that. Self-contained breathing, of course, means you've got scuba equipment or something similar that you can bring with you. There's eating life supports. You don't need to eat, or you can eat less often. Sleeping. So there's one life support that elves have. And so they only need to sleep. We're going to make it where they only have to sleep about 8 hours a week. This is a typical elvish ability from just about every setting, so I'll go along with it. And the other thing is longevity. Elves live for a very long time. In fact, they're immortal. In my world, elves live, except by violence or disease, forever. They do reach a certain point in their aging where they eventually wander off into the woods, never to be seen again, but they don't die of old age. So those are the two life supports that were needed for being an elf. And the other thing that they can do is they do have low light or night vision. And so we can add that. And so in the end, to be an elf character costs you 16 points. We can see our total cost spent out of, for PC, 160 total possible points. And so those are the powers and abilities that you start with as an elf. And then you have one chosen for you disadvantage, and that is a distinctive feature. For elves, it is concealable, and it is noticed and recognized, and that is that you are an elf. You have long, pointy ears. You have odd, strange eye colors. In my world, elves have eye color that range from amber to red to violet. And so their eye coloring is different. and so they are distinctive from the normal, from humans. But it is concealable. They can pull a hood up over their heads and things like that. They can't exactly wear contacts, but they can do some cosmetic changes as well, move their hair forward. Though most elves would never deign to do such things, but PCs, being PCs, have the option that they can go against the grain of the usual elf. So that said, bam, of their 75 points of the disadvantages, elves have 10 of them already taken up with their distinctive feature. And that's pretty much it. So what we do now is we come and we save, but this time we save as a package deal. We save it as an elf, and it brings up and goes to our directory, and I've already played with this one a little bit, and as you can see I've got a few others already there. And overwrite, and we're done. That's the elf package deal. So we can close that out, and no, since I'm not finishing and continuing with the character, we'll close it without saving. And now we can start all over again, this time for my little race called Flind. Again, they're kind of like, stature-wise and everything, hobbits or halflings from other role-playing games. I just decided I wanted to put my own flavor, my own spin to the character type, archetype. And so we've come up with the Flind. The Flind, culturally, they're not as comfort-seeking as usually hobbits and halflings are described as being. And they're a lot quicker and more nimble than the average human, as we will get into. So, working on that, they are, however, a lot weaker, a lot less strong. So we're going to cut them down on that. In fact, they're not even as strong as elves are. So you're going to be starting out at a pretty low end on strength when you decide to be a Flind. Dexterity, again, they're pretty dexterous. So we're going to jack that up a little bit. A general rule of thumb for the hero system is it's a arithmetic system. What that means is that generally every 5 points of a characteristic doubles the ability of that characteristic. So in other words, lifting capacity, every greater, if you increase your strength by 5 points, you've doubled your lifting capacity. So keep that in mind as well when making some of these things. Now, constitution-wise, they're just as sturdy and just as hardy as humans or any other race, but they're a lot smaller, so their body is not as great. I have not, I was just asked if I'd read the works of Jack Vance. I have not. Sorry. In fact, I'm going to write that author down because I usually make a point of finding new authors to read. So forgive me for taking a moment, but I'm going to write that down. Thank you, JVGS7, for giving me a new author to go look for. Great science fiction and fantasy author. I've given the context I kind of figured, so again, I'll definitely look him up. And thank you. Getting back into this, though, PD and ED wise, Flind are a lot weaker. I'm not going to reduce their starting PD and ED because it's already pretty dang low, but their maximum is significantly lower than normal human when they get there. Now, I am going to do one more expensive thing. Flind are faster than the other races. The other races, all of them, have a maximum speed of 4. Flind have a maximum speed of 5. What speed comes in is you see this phases. Every turn in combat is broken up into 12 1-second segments. And your speed determines which segments you act on. You get an action. So for speed 3, you act on the 4th, 8th, and 12th segments of a turn. And so bottom line, speed is important because you basically are setting how often and how many actions you get in that 12 segment turn. So Flynn start out just being faster because everybody else has a base speed, starting speed usually of 2. I'm going to bump that by 1. And they can actually get 2 more where everybody else would be just looking at 1 more. Let's see. They do have a little trouble running. You know, short legs have that issue, so we're going to take away some of the running ability. And that's the characteristics. Again, we won't be working on skills because we're just dealing strictly and straight up with the racial side of things. What does it mean? What does it give you or do to you to be this race? So, with that in mind, we move on. Let's see, what other do I guess? They do have some powers, some abilities. One is that they have, let's see, where is it? Characteristics, there it is. They do have some, or no, actually that's a could have. I'm reading my notes again. One thing you could add onto them is some strength only versus grabs. They're slippery. You try to grab them and you get away, but that's not something they're all capable of. So I'm going to really look through my notes here. Yes. Enhanced senses. They're hard to sneak up on. Why? Because they can hear and see you better. And so we put that on hearing group and sight group, and they gain a +2 to those 2 of perception roll on their perception rolls to see and hear things trying to sneak up on them. The bottom line, a perception roll is an intelligence roll, so 9. Yes, we're getting to that. 9 plus the appropriate characteristic divided by 5. And this is why this system is great. This software is great. Because all that math that I just mentioned, their intelligence divided by 5 right now would be 2 plus 9 is 11. And you'll see over here they've already got 11. But for the perception roll, they've got +2 on it, so it's already taking that into account as well. So there we go. And finally, they do have a bonus to their DCV, their defensive combat value, due to their small size. So that's handled by coming over here to skills, and there's these nice little things called combat skill levels, and we have to set the level, unfortunately, to the 5-point level where it's with hand-to-hand combat, but we can add a modifier, limitation, because these combat levels can normally be used to increase your offensive combat value, how readily and easily you can hit on target, and they could be used, you can assign them or to your DCV, your defensive combat value, or you can set combat skill levels to increase the damage of a weapon. For the Flynn, these DCV levels, because of their size, can only be used for DCV, so that cuts the effectiveness by about a half. So only for DCV, and we're done with the limitations on that, and we're going to give them 2 of those, and we're going to call it small size, which reminds me of one other thing we ought to change, and that's in their background information here. They should be about yep, that's about right, so about 120 centimeters tall, or 1.2 meter, which translates to about 3'11". And so their mass should be nearly equivalently cut, so they're only about 45 kilograms, And other than that, we've done with the Flind. And so they start out, you need 17 points to be a Flind. They also have a distinctive feature that is concealable. Actually, yes, it's concealable. I was going to go not concealable, but their size, with their size, they can pass themselves off as a child. So, and it's still noticed and recognized. It's not major reaction, oh my God, it's a Flind type thing. And they also have, no, that's it. They could have a social limitation, always considered to be a child, but I leave that up to the player. If your Flind happens to isn't all battle scarred and so forth, or is all battle scarred and so forth, you could, of course, not have that social limitation. Nobody is taking you as a child. So, social limitation is a choice that you can make, but is not a required one. So once again, we're going to save as a package deal. And bam, that one's done. Alright, so finally, we get to the Mountain Dwarf. Now, Mountain Dwarf, because I've played in this world before with the Mountain Dwarfs. I had a player who played two players that have played them, in fact. And so thanks to their assistance, I've really got a good handle on their culture as well as just their abilities. So I really enjoy when people play Mountain Dwarves because I've had a lot of fun working them out. That said, Mountain Dwarves are typical dwarves. They're sturdy, they're hardy, and they're strong. So they start out with some extra constitution, but they're not as nimble or quick. So they have a lower dex to start out with. They also are a bit sturdier than normal. So they start out with more body. And finally, they're tougher, so they've got more PD and ED. And I think that is it, other than they also suffer from the issue of running with short legs. So let's go ahead and go back to the background. Oh yes, one more thing they suffer from, because as I will show you and go over, I think that's right, yep, they're about 160 centimeters tall, but they have the same mass as a human. So what do you think the problem there is? Yeah, they don't swim. They rock. They don't swim. Alright, so skills, perks, talents. And powers. Once again, we have some enhanced senses. They do have infrared perception. Where is it? There it is. So it's already nicely built in. It's got sense, range, and targeting because it's part of the sight group. And so there's enhanced sense, infrared sight. And they also have a life support, longevity, because they live for about 400 years. So there they are. And, we've only spent 7 points to be a mountain dwarf, but their stats that they have increases in, dex and speed, are honestly the most expensive characteristics in the game to buy. Let me see if it shows you what they cost. No, they don't. But you can kind of infer. I lowered dex here by 2 points, and it costs -6. So dex is 3 character points per point of dexterity. And that's because it figures into the speed, which is 10 points per point of speed, because that is very important. That sets how often you move again. So, or how often you react and get an action. So, there we go with that. And once again, they'll have a concealable, noticed and recognized. And here, actually, I shouldn't put mountain dwarf because physically the two types of dwarves look very much the same. Where they come in different is mountain dwarves have a culture of being very proud of their beards. In fact, they bead and knot work it and loop it around and everything in very complicated and intricate ways that display their family rank, their rank within their profession, and all of this type of stuff. You can actually, if you know their culture, you can actually tell a lot about a mountain dwarf simply by how they have their beards. And yes, that means the females are bearded as well. So there we go. Whereas the hill dwarves don't do that. The mountain dwarves have a very strict sense of honor and integrity that they follow. But you do tend to know you're dealing with a dwarf because they're small stature, but also they're broad and heavy. All right, so no, actually, the dwarves do not have because they do not live. I do not have where they get anything other than their constitution bonus to as far as diseases. Would I quibble? In other words, do you have justification for immunities or resistances to disease? Absolutely, you've got that by just being a dwarf. And in fact, there's resistance here that can do that, or you can take a full-blown life support where you actually have immunity to like alcohol or bacterial infections or something like that. But no, I don't start off any of my dwarves Wondergoon with necessarily having that resistance. Again, they have it from the fact that their constitution is a lot higher usually than others. In fact, their constitution can go up to 25 as opposed to the normal human maximum of 20. So if you're playing a mountain dwarf, I'm sitting here going, you should be looking at 15 minimum, honestly, constitution. Um, Simply because they are that much hardier, sterner than the usual human. But again, absolutely, yes. Take resistance, take the talent resistance, or take the life support. I am definitely going to go yes. um, the problem with the life support and getting immunity is you have to buy immunity as immunity to each thing. So if you wanted to be immune to toxins, you'd have a list yay long of immunities in your life support, and it'd cost you an arm and a leg, character point wise. So for them, actually, I think the talent of resistance, which just go ahead and look at that. Resistance represents a character's ability to resist interrogate. Okay, so that's interrogation, hypnosis, meditation, and pure stubbornness. So resistance actually is not what I was thinking it is. It's simply the ability to resist interrogation and torture, which is still appropriate for a mountain dwarf, but that's not what we were discussing. So immunities would have to be done through the life support, or buying con only for resisting poisons and diseases. Which, you know what? No, I won't do that this time. But let's save this before let me make sure everything's taken care of. Yes. So let's go ahead and save this package deal. Mountain Dwarf. And then, before I start taking up too much time, let's actually at least start making a character to show you how you would use one of these package deals. So again, new character, 5th edition, because I'm using 5th edition rules, and we start out with the base character. But then we come in here, under current character, and we can apply a package deal. Now I'll throw it out to you guys. What kind of character do we want to see applied? Elf, Flynn, Elf, okay. So we click on Elf and we apply package deal. Whoa, wait a minute, nothing changed. But did it? Ah, there we go. It's already put in our characteristic changes where they start out at. We already have the distinctive feature for being an elf. We have the powers already done. So, bottom line, doing these package deals essentially just is a shortcut for giving you the starting place for any of these types of characters. Moving on from there, I'm never going to sit here, you know, what adventuring character wants to have an 8 strength, right? So we'll go ahead and bump that a little bit. We'll go ahead and give him a 10 strength. You know, there we go. But let's emphasize that this is an elf and make them nimble, dexterous. We'll go ahead and put the con back up to the human base of 10, and you kind of get the picture. We can still go wherever we want with have the character be. So we'll bump the intelligence up a little bit, and the ego, and the presence, which I guess I should these, but then again, I go into that in the other videos that are available. Um, so this is how you use the package deals. It essentially gives you a good starting place um, from which to start building the character, and especially when you're doing something like a race that always from a certain point in the character creation. Um, I could continue, go do something else, or I can end this video, which is already at 30 minutes. Most of mine get a little long-winded, so you know, that's kind of up to you. Um, you know, I'm always, if you notice here, the actual speed, your base speed is your dexterity divided by 10. It's 1. So for this character, it's 2.7. And if you remember, I mentioned that speed costs 10 points per. Well, it's one of the few times where they actually keep track of that decimal point, as with speed here. I've gotten 0.7 of that next point of speed. So you only need to pay 3 character points to get it on up to the next level. And so that's what I did there. Spent 3 character points and went from a speed 2 to a speed 3 with this character. Let's see. I think I am going to call it a halt there because some of these races, like elves and so forth. That may be in the next video, is actually build some of these cultural packages, so you can see how to fit in skills and so forth into that thing. Noticing that I'm dropping a little bit, so that's also making me want to. So yeah, my internet has not been behaving very well lately. How bad is? How bad was it? Okay. Apparently pretty bad, so I'm going to call this one to a halt. Um, I will be back soon with another one, and hopefully now. Well,